Morning. It's fall. I know the last one of these that I did, it was summertime. This is hike and chat number 2 or 3, depending on... It's probably number 2. I think it's number 2. I recorded one that probably won't see the light of day because I kind of was just doing it for the sake of it. We're here at Sugarloaf Hill. This is my favorite trail in the area. And yeah, let's get going. Pork Chop's here with us. It's a beautiful October day. Here, Pork Chop. There's no one here. It's 8:30 in the morning. Sugarloaf is a big weekend trail, but on the weekdays, no one's ever really here. So what are we going to talk about this hike and chat? My wife is... Do they call it 9 months when you're in your 9 months, or is it 9 months after you've finished the 9 months? She's in her 9th month in any case. Super exciting. I can't wait. We're really happy. I've been looking forward to this fall for quite a while because of this. Look at this drop. So Sugarloaf is really, really cool. If you look all the way up there, you can't really see it, but there's a castle on the top of the hill. It's private property, but apparently it wasn't always, or there used to be access to it because there's a sign that specifically says that there is no longer public access to the castle. And what's cool about Sugarloaf is it's actually part of a much bigger network of trails. And what I mean by much bigger is that we can actually get to the Appalachian Trail from this trail. And what I mean by actually is that, well, this trail hits the Appalachian Trail. It's very, very simple and easy to do. We've got a solid stretch of the trail here in Putnam County. So yeah, I've walked it, you know, not end to end. No, I've done the Putnam, like 5 miles of the Appalachian Trail quite a few times. It's nice. It's like right on top of this hill that we're walking towards now. Well, it's actually on top of a hill that's behind this hill, but it's quite a, it's a lot of elevation, but not too far from here. Oh, this is good. It's a little cold out today. Beautiful October day. It's like October 6th, I think. And it's like 50 degrees, which is my favorite temperature for it to be, to get some nice outdoor activity because you don't need to really dress up. Just wear a flannel, something for the ears, just for the beginning of the walk. And usually I'm fine. I'm already getting hot, so it's good. This is the temperature where if I've got a solid 125 beat per minute heart rate going, I won't sweat at all. I'll just chill in perfect stasis. All right. Oh, well, we're off to a good start. So yeah, baby boy is on the way. So I've been looking forward to this month for so long because I love fall and it's always my favorite. And like, I've, you know, had a few times in my life where I was really not feeling amazing about myself or the direction things were going, and whatever the case, when fall comes around, I can't help but be in a good mood because it kind of channels my natural kind of wistfulness that I feel the rest of the year. And feeling wistful in the summer is kind of depressing, but feeling wistful in the fall is perfectly seasonally appropriate. So for me, it just kind of, I embrace it. I embrace the melancholic nature of it, and it makes me feel super cozy and comfortable. Also, like, I'm super seasonal with my media, and fall, my like mantra has always been fall fantasy, spring sci-fi. So in the fall, I read a ton of fantasy novels. Spring, I read a ton of sci-fi novels. But lately, like in my adult life, And since like politics has gone off the rails, I do spend quite a bit of time trying to keep up with things. So there's a lot of nonfiction involved at this point. And I also watch a ton of YouTube, which varies in subject, but is also largely nonfiction. And so I've had a hard time getting into stories again, getting into fiction again, and like investing myself in characters that I know aren't real. But recently, I've found that that barrier has been lowered. I've watched a few movies lately. I read a book yesterday. And don't get me wrong, I read a ton, but like I'm not one of these, you know, wow, I read a book people. It's just been a while since I've indulged in fiction. So I did this yesterday. I read a whole book, beginning to end, over the course of the day. It was a like cheesy New York Times best-selling thriller, you know, the type. I have a soft spot for those. And I've decided, anyway, to revise, at least for this year, my mantra a little bit. Maybe it's not fall fantasy, spring sci-fi. Maybe it's just fall fiction. So you'll see there's a car up there. Maybe you won't, but there is one road that goes through here. Look at Pork Chop. This road doesn't actually go through here. It kind of just like goes in about a mile, hooks along like looping, like arc kind of shape, and then it just stops. So funny thing about Sugarloaf. So what we're in now is called the Castle Rock Unique Historic Area, I believe. And Sugarloaf Hill is just the one hill that we're walking to on the trail that we're walking on today. Ooh. But the first time that I came here, I got terribly lost. This tree, that one right there, is gonna get really nice. It always does. Well, at least it did last year, which is the only year I've had up in Putnam so far. Yeah, so the first time that I came in here, I got super lost, and I'll show you later on when we get to the point in the trail that I got so lost at. But basically, you can make a right at one point here and access like the whole, you know, greater offering of this trail network, or you can make a left. There is actually no left. There's just, I guess, a part where it looks like you could, I don't know. Somehow I decided to off-road, and I thought it'll be easy enough because I have a good sense of direction to get myself where I need to be. Pork Chop, come. Woo! There's a dog down there somewhere. There's houses like around here. Anyway, so I made it. Like, I was walking on the trail that we're on now for a little bit. I did not go to Sugarloaf. I was on a trail that would have eventually hit the Appalachian Trail, and I decided to just like go left because my sense of direction was like, you know, well, west is that way. I had a therapy appointment in like 45 minutes, and I was trying to get back to the car to then drive home to go to therapy. Probably, I think it was in like an hour because I wanted to shower too. I had plenty of time. What I wound up doing instead is tromping around the woods here for like 40 minutes. And as it turns out, all of the trails, I made a left. I went west, and all of the trails were east. So I just was walking around in this like very wooded part of this kind of forest, wondering when I was gonna hit a trail. And eventually, because I had full service the whole time, which was very nice, eventually I hit that road. So Pork Chop hears a dog barking down there, and it's probably, there's a couple houses on this property. It's gotta be for one of them. Pork Chop, come. Do not do it. Pork Chop, you come on. So this path and this path both go to the same place, but we're gonna take this one. Bye-bye, this way. Pork Chop, hey, come on. Oh. Me looking at the So a good tip of hiking is you should look at the paths you're going to take a little bit more than 2 feet ahead. Alright. So when I wound up coming out of my lost period and I found that road up there, from there I was able to find the trail we were just on again. And this log is actually where I sat and took therapy. And it was lovely, it was so nice. I actually like really fondly remember that, because even though I got lost, I had full cell phone service the whole time, like 5G, the whole nine. So like, I was listening to YouTube stories and shit, and like, it was fine. And I knew that I could take therapy there. So like, it was really cool. This is nice. So this little brook has been quite dry for like a couple months now. So we've had a lot of rain. It seems like it's finally starting to help. Oh, all right. So basically by going on that trail, we just cut out walking there and then up here. We just cut through diagonally. Come, Pork Chop. There's someone with a dog. Pork Chop, come on. Now. Come. This is a good test for you, Pork Chop. You've never really been in an off-leash situation where I've had to continually keep her from getting distracted by something. So this is good. Good training, baby. Look at her. So Sugarloaf Trail has two very nice viewing views. There's the one on the way, and then there's Sugarloaf itself. We're gonna hit the one on the way pretty soon. And I have hit a point where this flannel is warm. I knew it would happen. Honestly, I thought it might happen a little sooner, but I'll take it. One of my favorite feelings is being out in air that felt cold to you, taking whatever layers you have off, because your heart is beating so much faster, and having it still feel cold, but having that cold now be a relief. That is one of my favorite things about exercising outdoors, especially around this time of year. All right, Pork Chop. So we're almost at view number one. This little right turn over here actually is not a trail. This is someone's private property. I mean, it is a trail, but it goes to someone's private property. Oh, imagine living in a house that had its own trail over to Sugarloaf. That would be so cool. Come on, we're going this way. Sorry for confusing you, Bubba. Oh, Pork Chop, getting good runs today. It's been raining for like 3 days and Pork Chop has been cooped up inside, and I think she's happy to be getting out and getting some exercise with me. Right, sweetie? Come on. Pork Chop, come. Sugarloaf is my trail that I'll take, like, if I don't want to do cardio at the gym. Basically, you probably noticed in the last hike and chat that I was extremely in control of my breathing the whole time. Well, that is not going to be the case for this one. We've already had some points. I mean, it's a hill. It's called Sugarloaf Hill. So, something I wanted to talk about today, something that's been nagging me, niggling at my brain, something that's been bothering me, is that, like, so my wife and I are planning on having a natural birth, with the understanding that, of course, things don't always go to plan. There may be necessary medical interventions that we wind up needing to take. Oh my. Ha ha. Oh, it doesn't look very big. Oh, someone's already got at it. Little chicken of the woods. Anyway, so we're planning on having a natural birth. And we've already switched hospitals and like care providers to like the whole, I don't know what the term is, but we've switched like delivery practices already once. And the reason for that is because we have a doula, and my wife is very educated as far as like health, especially women's health, especially women's reproductive health. And I don't really mean that in the way that you might assume. But anyway, she has a master's in public health, and she cares a lot about this and has spent a lot of personal time, you know, because she cares, learning about this stuff. And now that she's pregnant and that we're having a son, a child, she cares a lot more. So like, obviously it makes a lot of sense that we're trying to both inform ourselves as best as we can. So already we're leaning towards natural birth when we first got started. But as soon as we started, you know, really diving into the statistics, I guess, possible risks, possible benefits, etc., we got really sold. We decided this was definitely what we wanted to do. And in our reading and in our sort of research, and based off things that my wife already knew from her career and from her education, we knew that like going into a hospital, you aren't necessarily going to get the best experience for you. They're not in the business of customer service or customer experience at hospitals. You're there because presumably there's something wrong with you in most cases, you're sick in most cases, you're experiencing physical discomfort in virtually all cases. And their job is basically to minimize your discomfort if possible and get you out of there alive and in relative good health. And they have the benefit of having a little bit of a chokehold on information, right? Like Western medicine pretty much dominates the culture. Alternative medicine is not really smiled upon. And I'm not like a holistic medicine kind of guy, but this is true. All right, so this is the first view. It's lovely. That's West Point over there. I've got to lose this flannel. Oh, porked up. Leave the camera. Anyway, so what we found out, the feeling we got immediately was that these hospitals are not necessarily going to be invested in giving us the experience that we want. And while in most cases that's like probably fine, I mean, because like I said, you're sick or you're experiencing discomfort or you need some type of procedure done, and comfort isn't necessarily your top priority. But I think when it comes to childbirth, it's a little bit different. And I'm not talking about physical comfort, but like emotional comfort, happiness with the procedure, like understanding of what's happening, feeling like you're in control or like you're playing a part in giving birth to your child. We call this like the most magical, wonderful thing that, you know, anyone can do, and this superpower that women have and all of this shit. But at the end of the day, we have stripped so much from this process. And it's all in the name of safety, of course, and outcomes have improved a lot over the last 100 years. If you strictly view outcomes as like mothers not dying in childbirth, but in attempting to solve or mitigating some of that problem, there have been so many concessions that we make along the way. And what the result is that hospitals are extremely motivated to control every part of the process that they can control, because it will be more comfortable for them, because it's what they're more experienced with, and because they know that the outcome, insofar as mother mortality is concerned and infant mortality, will probably be better. And in practice, what this means is more interventions. And I'll give you a kind of example. There are cases in which a baby, for instance, best example I can think of, fetal heartbeat monitoring. This was invented in the 80s, I believe. And this means it's like when you go into the hospital, they'll usually strap something around your stomach, I guess. I don't know. They'll be monitoring the baby's heartbeat throughout the course of labor. And if the baby's heartbeat starts to decrease or shows any signs of struggle, they will pretty quickly push for a C-section. And when fetal monitoring was introduced, this is what we saw happen. We saw the C-section rate go up, and it was because hospitals, in an effort to mitigate risk, in an effort to avoid any situation wherein the health of the mother could be in danger, they played it very safe and went for a controlled process that they knew they were comfortable with, which was a cesarean delivery. So, how many women, I wonder, didn't necessarily want C-sections, but got them because of this fetal heartbeat monitoring? Now, an interesting secondary fact to all this is that other outcomes didn't change when fetal heartbeat monitoring was introduced. The only metric that changed was that C-sections started going up. So what I get from this is that hospitals, pork chop, come. She loves this disgusting lake. It smells worse than any lake I've ever encountered. So we're left with a result, which is that hospitals, and this is not just true of fetal heartbeat monitoring, there's like a ton of different things that they look for, and basically any chance to do an intervention to put you on a path where it is as controllable as possible, and in many cases that's a C-section, and in all the hospitals by us the C-section rate's like 40%. It's ridiculous. Even though when you don't get a C-section, like, let's look at I guess my point, I'm rambling, right? This is unscripted. My point is that so much of what is natural about this process has been stripped for the sake of safety, but at the expense of the experience of the woman. And while I don't usually think that your experience in a hospital should necessarily be like the paramount importance if you're giving birth, I feel a little bit differently. And the reason for that is because this is something that could be really rewarding, and that could be really amazing and magical and fulfilling for a mother. But in so many cases, it seems like people have had terrible times. Okay, so brief break. Here's the new sign they put up because the tree fell. That was the tree. Sugarloaf is up here. If we were to go down that path off to the right there, we'd hit the Appalachian Trail. And if we were to go up that path, we'd hit the Appalachian Trail. The Osborne Loop is a big loop that goes that way or that way. And you hit the Appalachian Trail when you're going crosswise. And there's a few other trails that you can also hit. The Appalachian Trail obviously connects to a bunch of other stuff. Anyway, come on, pork chop, we're going this way. Mountain time, so this is where it's gonna get a little labored. Pork chop, what are you doing? Come. Boba, come. So what we're left with, if I may continue, is the system in which the hospital is trying to make everything as safe as possible, except for safe for them literally just means that, like, you're not going to die and you're going to be sick, and the baby's not going to die and the baby's not going to be sick. And these are all things that we should be aiming for, and I'm not trying to say that, like, these should be lower on the priority list. But what winds up happening is women who don't necessarily need interventions, or who may not necessarily need interventions, may wind up being pressured into getting an intervention that isn't necessary because it is what's best, what is most convenient, what is least risky for the hospital, at the expense of a mother feeling in control of the process, informed about the decisions that she's making, or having the birth experience that she wants. And I don't think anyone's necessarily entitled to the birth experience they want. We're all beholden to nature. But I do think that we're entitled to make informed decisions and to reject unnecessary intervention when it interferes with what we want, if we deem it to be unnecessary. We are all the most knowledgeable about our own situation. And that's not to say that there aren't necessary medical interventions, but it seems like these necessary interventions are overused. Whew. So where am I going with all this? I guess I was telling the story of how Margot and I got to where we are and what's been on my mind lately. So with all of this knowledge that Margot and I were encountering, all these things that we were finding out, this feeling we were getting, we decided that looking into getting a doula might be a good idea. So we did. And oh, pork chop. All right, I'm gonna bang out this little piece. What's fun about Sugarloaf is it looks like this is it, and you hit this kind of plateau. It's not a fucking plateau. So with all of this in mind, my wife and I decided that getting a doula would probably be a good move. And the thinking, at least the analogy I used, was that going into a hospital without a doula to give birth is kind of like going into an interrogation room without a lawyer. Cops are trying to do the right thing. They're trying to do the right thing by the justice system. And often, they're trying to do what's right for the station, for them, for their career. That's why we have a lawyer, because they're able to see these things. They know the ropes. They know what's necessary, what's not, what's legit, what's not, and they help you navigate. Wow, pork chop. Showing off. Now this is the true plateau, right up here. And it's a good thing because, I mean, this takes it out of you. All right, Boba, let's just stand. Okay, maybe not. Where are you going? You want some water, sweetie? Pork chop, come here. Ready? Drink. There you go. Good girl. Where are you going? Oh, there's definitely some kind of animal that likes to poop down there, because whenever we come up, she always gets very sidetracked. Is that a little wine, Boba? Did you step on something sharp? Anyway, so we decided to get a doula. We decided to get a doula, and we were at this time with the first practice that we initially settled on when we were looking for a hospital to give birth at. And when we mentioned it to the doctor at our next appointment, her response was like kind of tepid. The first thing that she said was, well, that's good, as long as she understands what her role is in the delivery room. And like, we could probably stop right there, because if the first thing that comes to your mind when you find out that we're going to be using a doula is, as long as she knows her place, well, I don't really need to ask what you think the place is, you know? It seems pretty obvious. Boba, we're not going down there, come. So she said that, and then my wife brought up fetal monitoring. She said, so like, will fetal monitoring be done? And I mentioned this earlier, where usually hospitals will monitor the fetus's heartbeat throughout. And if it dips, or if anything happens, really, the point is, like, anything happens, they want to give you a C-section. If it dips, they give you a C-section. So you don't need to get fetal heartbeat monitoring, but most hospitals have a policy of doing fetal heartbeat monitoring. You can do what's called intermittent monitoring, which means exactly what it sounds like, checking periodically to see what the baby's heartbeat is. So my wife mentioned at this doctor's appointment, she asked about fetal monitoring and if it was possible to do intermittent monitoring rather than constant fetal heartbeat monitoring. And the doctor was just like, the heartbeat will be monitored throughout. So like it seemed immediately like her initial instinct was to make sure that our expectations were set properly for what the hospital that we were looking at and the practice were going to be doing when we were there. And that really rubbed us the wrong way. So we wound up switching hospitals, and we wound up switching practices, and now we're at a midwifery, I don't really know. And what we've started to notice as we get more into this kind of world, because the more you research this, the less you feel like, you know, this is one of those rabbit hole topics that you can really get into, like the science and medicine behind childbirth. Women have like always suffered in the medical space, like Western medicine, but yeah, childbirth is something that like has been completely fucked by the Western medical approach, at least in my opinion. You know, there's probably a lot less child mortality, infant mortality than there maybe would be without Western intervention, but there has to be a middle ground. And right now, with the way that the system works, there really doesn't seem to be. And what we've found as we've gotten more and more into this is that most people who are super informed, most people who have gone down the similar path that we've gone down, a lot of the doulas we speak to, some of the midwives even, people like that, a lot of the people that we follow on social media, like different midwives and doulas, they all give home births. They don't even bother with the hospital. And like, that is something that for both of us seemed completely unreasonable and unfathomable 6 months ago. And not only did it seem unreasonable and unfathomable, we were like, ugh, like what kind of weird, crunchy, lunatic people want to do a whole, like who cares that much, you know? But the more we have researched, the more we have completely understood why these people would opt for that. Now, maybe we're going to have a great experience at the hospital that we're at. And if we have even a serviceable one, right? I'm very much of the opinion that like, yes, the system exists, but you can also use your words and actions to influence it in your individual case. And we're not going to solve the world's childbirth problems by me going in and firmly speaking to some doctors, but at least we might leave with an experience that my wife is happy with, which is really the only thing that I care about at the end of the day. But depending on how this experience goes, my wife is like legitimately considering what a home birth might look like. And the fact that we've gotten to that point, I think is really telling. And the fact that we got there from a point of being like very put off by the idea and like even judging the people who might do it is also really telling. And we've found ourselves in a position now where we are the ones being judged, and we haven't even been given birth yet, but like a lot of the time when Margot says she's going to give a natural birth or even starts to talk about Western medicine and childbirth outcomes, people like kind of like start to back away a little bit. Like we've been very effectively, I don't want to use like a hyperbolic term, but like the idea that Western medicine is the only way forward when it comes to childbirth and that all alternatives are some crunchy hippie like nonsense is something that has been pumped into our brains from birth. At least it was mine without me even knowing it. And the more we talk to other women about their childbirth experiences, the more we realize that what these hospitals are doing a lot of the time leaves the women feeling really shitty. It leaves them feeling traumatized. It leaves them feeling like they've just been through an experience where they did not understand why things were happening to them. They were overwhelmed by different terms and processes and shit all being thrown at them at once. They were in pain, in a new environment, confused with maybe their husband there, but maybe he doesn't know either. Maybe he's also confused. I mean, there's so much going on that you cannot blame any individual patient who enters the system and leaves with a shitty outcome for the outcome that they had. You can't. Like, it's understandable that people want to trust institutions, but what I'm saying right now is these people have been brainwashed. They have. And it's so saddening for me to talk to all of these people, and Margot's doing the same thing. And like 90% of the birth stories are intensely traumatic. So many women have left giving birth feeling like that's something that they never want to do again, feeling like it was a terrible experience. And just because it's going to be painful and difficult doesn't mean it needs to be terrible. It isn't necessary to feel like a fucking ship lost at sea being pelted by a storm when you enter a hospital to give birth. It just isn't. And every time that we have sort of voiced anything along those lines, or even pushed to see what options were, or to ask why certain procedures were necessary in any of the hospital or medical settings that we've been in, we have gotten either firm and overt pushback or sort of tepid passive aggression. And when we talk to our friends and even to our family about this, the same people who will tell us that they had such a traumatic and terrible birth experience, that it was so painful or scary or whatever, that they never wanted to do it again, that it took them a while, like so long to get over the experience, let alone the physical trauma that they underwent, these same people will then like kind of like edge away from us and roll their eyes when we start talking about like the system that gave them this experience. And it's just so fucking frustrating and saddening, because the most effective form of subjugation and depression is one where you get the people to do it to themselves. And there's social pressure being exerted constantly on people to conform to a system that is going to give them a negative outcome in what should be the most magical and incredible and impressive thing that they ever do in their lives. So I feel really strongly about that. And that's what I wanted to talk about today. Here we are at the view. It's really beautiful up here. Top of Sugarloaf. There's like a cargo train that goes through as well, freight train. Let's see if we can get it on the GoPro. Oh, we're missing the end of it there. Oh, okay. You can kind of see it through the trees. Yeah, so this is my favorite hike. Right, Pork Chop? All right, I think I'm gonna call it here. I've gotten my thoughts out for the day. I am, feeling good. This is a good start to the morning. From here, the Sugarloaf Trail, like, you have a few options. You can go back to the Osborne Loop and just keep going. That ridge up there, I believe, is what the Appalachian Trail runs on. Or you can just go back. And in our case, we're gonna go back because it's a Thursday, I believe, and I have work. Great start to the day. Hike and chat number 2. Complete.